Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend, and not everyone who stands beside you wants the best for you. Some people don't destroy you with weapons or lies. They destroy you by draining your energy, your peace, and your strength. And the most dangerous part, you don't notice it happening until it's almost too late. The manipulator is one of the most dangerous people you will ever meet in your life, because unlike an enemy who confronts you openly, the manipulator attacks you silently, invisibly, and in ways that you often cannot defend yourself against until it's too late. They don't use fists, they don't shout, and they don't declare war. Their weapon is far more subtle and far more damaging: words. The manipulator knows how to twist what you say, how to distort reality, and how to make you question your own memory, your own choices, and even your own worth. One conversation with them and you find yourself apologizing for things you never did, doubting decisions you once felt confident about, and shrinking into a version of yourself you barely recognize. That's the danger. You don't realize you're losing yourself because the manipulator makes it feel like you're just trying to keep the peace, like you're the one who's wrong, like you're the one who needs to change. They will gaslight you, which means they deliberately make you question what you know to be true. They'll say things like, "I never said that," even when you know they did. They'll claim, "You're too sensitive," when in fact you're reacting to their cruelty. They'll insist, "You're imagining things," when in reality you're noticing the red flags they want you to ignore. Over time you begin to doubt your instincts, and once you doubt your instincts, you're in their control. That's exactly how they win. By silencing the inner voice inside you that once screamed, "This is wrong." You start relying on their version of events instead of your own. And that is the most dangerous place to be, because when you lose trust in yourself, you become easy to control. What makes manipulators so dangerous is that they don't look dangerous at all. They often come disguised as charming, caring, supportive individuals. They may be friends, partners, family members, even colleagues who seem like they're looking out for you. But underneath that mask is a hunger for control. They thrive when you bend to their will. They celebrate when you start second-guessing yourself. They feel powerful when you're too afraid to stand up for yourself. This is why many people stay trapped in manipulative relationships for years, because on the surface it looks like the manipulator is just being helpful, protective, or concerned. It's only when you peel back the layers that you see the pattern. The subtle digs, the guilt trips, the twisting of words, the constant shifting of blame. The manipulator will often use guilt as one of their sharpest weapons. They'll say things like, "After all I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" Or, "You're so ungrateful." And suddenly you feel the need to justify yourself, to explain, to defend your actions. They make you feel like you owe them something when in reality you owe them nothing. Every time you let guilt control your actions, they win a little more ground in your life. Another favorite tool of the manipulator is playing the victim. They'll turn every situation around so it looks like you're the one who hurt them, like you're the one at fault, like you're the bad guy. This keeps you on the defensive, constantly trying to prove you're not the person they paint you to be. But here's the truth. You don't have to prove anything to them. Manipulators thrive on this endless cycle of guilt and defense, because it keeps you distracted and keeps them in control. The way to break free from a manipulator is not by fighting them on their terms, because they will always twist your words and flip the narrative. The way you win is by refusing to engage in their game. You stop explaining yourself endlessly. You stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. You stop letting their version of the story override your own. You ground yourself in reality, in truth, in what you know deep down is right. You remind yourself that your memory, your instincts, and your perception are valid, even if they want you to believe otherwise. You build boundaries so strong that their manipulation bounces off instead of seeping in. And most importantly, you limit your exposure to them, because manipulators don't change. They don't wake up one day and suddenly decide to stop twisting people's minds. The only change that happens is when you decide you've had enough and you refuse to play their game anymore. The danger of a manipulator isn't just that they can make you doubt yourself. It's that they can steal years of your life if you let them. Years where you stay small, where you silence your voice, where you live in confusion instead of clarity. They will rob you of peace, of confidence, and of trust in yourself if you don't recognize what's happening. But once you see it clearly, once you name it, once you understand that what you're dealing with is manipulation, the power begins to shift. Because the one thing manipulators cannot control is a person who sees through their game and refuses to play. And when you reach that point, when you stand tall in your truth and stop letting them define your reality, that's when you finally take back your power. And that power is something no manipulator can ever steal again. The second dangerous person you must avoid is the one who thrives on constant negativity, because negativity is contagious in ways most people underestimate. And when you keep someone in your circle who always complains, always finds fault, and always sees the worst in every situation, it begins to infect your own perspective on life. These are the people who walk into a room and drain it of its energy, who look at opportunity and immediately list all the reasons it will fail, who listen to your dreams and reply not with encouragement, but with doubt, skepticism, or mockery. They are the kind of people who cannot stand to see light because they have already surrendered to darkness inside themselves, and the danger is that if you spend too much time around them, they will pull you into that same darkness without you realizing it. Think about how many times you've been excited about something, a new project, a personal goal, or even just a simple joy in your day, and you shared it with someone who immediately poured cold water on it. They might have said, "That's too hard," or "People like us don't get things like that," or "Why bother? It won't work out." At first you might brush it off, but the more you hear those messages, the more they plant seeds of doubt inside you. Over time, those seeds grow into hesitation, procrastination, and even self-sabotage. Negativity is not just a bad mood, it is poison to your confidence, your vision, and your ability to keep moving forward. That's why negative people are dangerous, because they don't just kill their own dreams, they kill yours too if you let them. What makes negative people so damaging is that they often believe they are being realistic. They'll tell you they're just being honest, just preparing you for disappointment, just keeping your feet on the ground. But realism and negativity are not the same thing. Realism acknowledges risk but still sees possibility. Negativity dismisses possibility entirely and insists on failure before you even begin. When you let these voices dominate your life, you start to confuse their fear with wisdom, their discouragement with truth, and their hopelessness with reality. Before long, you'll find yourself living a smaller, more limited life, not because you lacked the ability to achieve more, but because someone else convinced you it wasn't possible. These people can show up in many forms. A coworker who criticizes every idea in the office, a friend who constantly gossips and complains, a family member who never has anything positive to say about your choices, or even a partner who sees obstacles in everything you try to do. What unites them all is the way they train your mind to focus on the negative until you no longer see the positive at all. And once you stop seeing the positive, you lose your drive, your courage, and your hunger to grow. That's when they've won, because they have managed to lower you to their level without you even realizing it. To protect yourself from the negative person, you have to become hyper aware of the language they use and the effect it has on you. When you notice their constant complaints, stop absorbing them as truth. When you hear their doubts, remind yourself that those doubts are not yours, they belong to them. When they dismiss your goals, remember that they are only speaking from their own limitations, not yours. The key is to separate their voice from your inner voice, because the moment you allow their negativity to blend with your thoughts, you begin to lose clarity about what you're truly capable of. Another thing you must remember is that negativity is lazy. It takes no effort to say something won't work. It takes no strength to sit back and criticize. It takes no courage to point out obstacles. The negative person has chosen the easy path of tearing things down rather than the difficult path of building them up. And if you allow them to influence you, you are letting someone else's laziness dictate the trajectory of your life. But your life demands more than that. Your dreams demand more than that. And you deserve more than to be dragged down by someone who doesn't have the courage to rise up themselves. You don't have to argue with these people or try to convince them to see the positive, because you'll waste your energy. You don't have to fight them to prove your optimism is valid, because they'll only respond with more doubt. The best way to deal with negative people is to limit your exposure and protect your energy. Surround yourself with those who lift you, who encourage you, who believe in possibility even when things are tough. And when you cannot avoid a negative person entirely, perhaps in the workplace or within your family, then set strong mental boundaries. Don't allow their words to sink into you. Don't internalize their doubts. Let their negativity stay with them, where it belongs, instead of carrying it into your own mind. At the end of the day, negativity is a choice, just like positivity is a choice. The people who live in negativity have chosen to surrender to fear, to disappointment, and to hopelessness. But you don't have to make the same choice. You can decide to rise above it. You can decide to believe in what's possible. You can decide to keep moving forward, even when others try to tell you it's not worth it. And when you make that decision consistently, when you protect your energy from the poison of negativity, you not only keep your own light alive, you also inspire others to do the same. That is why avoiding negative people is not just about protecting your peace. It's about protecting your potential, your growth, and your ability to live a life that is bigger than fear, bigger than doubt, and bigger than the limits that others want to place on you. The third dangerous person you must avoid is the manipulator, because their danger lies not in open attacks but in the silent, invisible strings they tie around your mind. Manipulators do not need to shout, threaten, or show anger because their weapon is subtle control. They twist conversations to make you doubt yourself. They disguise selfish motives as concern for your well-being. And they make you feel guilty for not giving them what they want. What makes them so dangerous is that you often don't see the manipulation until you are already trapped. They are masters at making you question your own judgment, your own memory, and even your own worth. And once you start second-guessing yourself, they win. Because the moment you lose trust in your own intuition, you become easier to control. Think about how manipulation works. It doesn't start with force. It starts with persuasion, flattery, or false kindness. A manipulator studies you, learns your weaknesses, and uses them to their advantage. If you crave validation, they give it just enough to hook you, then withdraw it to make you chase it. If you fear conflict, they exploit that by making you feel guilty whenever you resist them. If you value loyalty, they use it to keep you tied to them even when the relationship drains you. It's a psychological game, and the manipulator always plays to win. The cost is your independence, your clarity, and eventually your identity, because over time you stop living for your own choices and start living in reaction to their influence. One of the most common tactics manipulators use is guilt. They know exactly how to frame a situation so you feel like the bad person if you don't comply with what they want. Maybe they say things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." Or, "If you really cared, you'd do this for me." Suddenly, the focus shifts away from their unreasonable demand and onto your sense of morality. They make you carry the weight of responsibility for their feelings, their happiness, and even their failures. This is dangerous because once you take on guilt that isn't yours, you become trapped in an endless cycle of trying to please someone who will never be satisfied. Another tool manipulators use is gaslighting. They distort the truth, deny things they've said or done, and make you feel like you're imagining problems that are real. For example, if you confront them about a hurtful comment, they might say, "You're too sensitive. I was just joking." Or, "That never happened. You must be remembering it wrong." Over time, you start to question your own memory and perception, and that's exactly where they want you. Unsure of yourself and dependent on them for what is real. That's not just dangerous, it's toxic, because it undermines the very foundation of your confidence, your ability to trust your own mind. And manipulators also thrive on keeping you off balance. One day they may shower you with praise, affection, or attention, and the next day they withdraw it without explanation. This hot and cold behavior creates confusion and insecurity because you never know where you stand with them. It trains you to work harder to earn their approval, to adjust your behavior just to get back in their good graces. And while you're busy chasing their unpredictable validation, they're the ones in control, pulling the strings while you dance to their rhythm. That's why manipulators are so dangerous. They make you forget that your worth is not dependent on anyone else's approval. The danger of manipulators extends beyond personal relationships. You can find them in workplaces, using charm to climb the ladder while exploiting colleagues. You can find them in friendships, presenting themselves as loyal while secretly using your trust for their benefit. You can even find them in family, hiding behind love to justify control. Wherever they are, the pattern is the same. They take, they twist, they control, and they leave you smaller than you were before. The tragedy is that manipulators often convince you that you need them, when in reality, they need you more, because without someone to control, they lose their power. The way to protect yourself from a manipulator is first awareness. You must be able to recognize the patterns of guilt, tripping, gaslighting, and hot and cold behavior. Once you see them clearly, you take away much of their power. Second, you must reclaim your right to trust yourself. If someone constantly makes you doubt your memory, your choices, or your instincts, that is a sign they are not safe to keep close. Third, you must set boundaries that are not negotiable. A manipulator will always test limits, so you must make it clear through action, not argument, that your boundaries are firm. If they try to guilt trip you, refuse to take the blame for feelings that are not yours. If they try to gaslight you, hold to your truth. If they withhold approval, remind yourself that you do not need it to validate your worth. The hardest part about avoiding manipulators is that they often wear masks of kindness, loyalty, or even love. But remember, real love does not manipulate, real loyalty does not control, and real kindness does not require you to sacrifice your peace. Once you understand that, you stop falling for the illusions they create. You stop letting their strings bind you, and you step into the freedom of making choices that are truly yours. And in that freedom, you discover just how strong and capable you really are. At the core, manipulators are dangerous because they rob you of your independence and replace it with dependence on them. They dim your clarity and replace it with confusion. They shrink your confidence and replace it with self-doubt. But you are not powerless against them. The moment you see the manipulation for what it is, the spell is broken. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to explain yourself endlessly. You simply need to reclaim your own voice and walk away from the strings they try to tie around you. Because the truth is, you were never meant to be controlled. You were meant to be free, and when you protect yourself from manipulators, you protect that freedom and keep your life in your own hands, where it belongs. The fourth dangerous person you must avoid is the constant liar, because nothing destroys trust faster than dishonesty. A liar doesn't just bend the truth. They rewrite it to serve their own agenda. They lie to protect themselves, they lie to gain something, and they lie simply because it's easier than facing accountability. The danger in keeping a liar close is that their words become quicksand. You think you're standing on solid ground, but slowly the lies pull you under until you can't tell what's real anymore. And the scariest part is not the lie itself, but the way it makes you doubt your own ability to judge people. Every lie chips away at the foundation of trust, and without trust, there can be no real relationship. No matter how much history or love you think you share, liars are dangerous because their dishonesty is rarely obvious in the beginning. They don't always start with big lies. Instead, they test boundaries with small ones. Maybe they lie about being late, or about why they didn't call, or about something they bought or said. At first, you dismiss it as harmless. You tell yourself, it's not a big deal, everyone lies sometimes. But that's exactly how liars operate, through normalization. Once you start excusing the small lies, it becomes easier for them to escalate into bigger ones. And when the bigger lies come, you're already desensitized. You've already accepted dishonesty as part of the relationship, and by the time you realize the damage, it's much harder to walk away. A constant liar is skilled at creating illusions. They weave stories so convincingly that you begin to question your own perception. If you confront them, they act offended, turning the blame back on you with lines like, "You don't trust me," or "You're imagining things." They create confusion to protect themselves, and in that confusion they keep their control. The danger here is not just the lie itself, but the erosion of your confidence in your instincts. When someone repeatedly lies and denies it, you begin to silence your own inner voice. You stop trusting what you see, what you hear, and what you feel. And that silence is exactly what allows the liar to continue unchecked. Liars also have a way of charming their way back into your good graces. When they are caught, they don't always admit the truth. Sometimes they double down on denial, and other times they apologize just enough to keep you. They promise to do better, they give excuses about why they lied, they play the victim of circumstances. But notice this, the apologies rarely match with changed behavior. The words are there, but the actions betray the truth. And that's why liars are dangerous. They keep you locked in cycles of disappointment and false hope. You think, this time it will be different, but it never is. Because for a liar, the habit of dishonesty runs deeper than the willingness to change. The damage of being around constant liars is not just emotional, it's practical too. Lies waste your time, your energy, and your opportunities. Imagine trusting someone with your plans, your business, or your future, only to realize they've been misleading you all along. Suddenly you're left to pick up the pieces, often at a cost that cannot be recovered. That's why keeping liars close is dangerous. They compromise your stability, your progress, and your ability to move forward. And when you realize how much time you've lost believing in false words, that's when the anger and regret set in. But perhaps the deepest wound liars inflict is betrayal. When someone lies, they are not just hiding the truth. They are making a choice to prioritize their comfort over your trust. That betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from people you love. Because love is built on vulnerability. You let them in, you open yourself, and instead of honoring that trust, they poison it with dishonesty. That betrayal changes you. It makes you more guarded, more suspicious, less open to genuine connections. And in that sense, liars don't just steal the truth. They steal pieces of who you are, leaving scars that take years to heal. Protecting yourself from liars requires courage. It means not ignoring the red flags of dishonesty, no matter how small. It means paying attention to patterns instead of isolated incidents, because one lie can be a mistake, but repeated lies are a character trait. You cannot build a safe life around someone whose foundation is dishonesty. And if you try, you'll always be unstable, always doubting, always waiting for the next lie to surface. That's no way to live. The strongest move you can make is to cut ties with those who cannot respect the truth. Because truth is not negotiable in any healthy relationship. The truth is liars thrive where there is tolerance. If you excuse dishonesty, if you brush it aside, if you allow it to continue, then you give the liar permission to keep lying. But when you demand truth through your boundaries and actions, you make it clear that dishonesty has no place in your life. That doesn't mean everyone around you will always be perfect. But it does mean you stop sacrificing your peace for the comfort of those who refuse to live with integrity. Because the reality is this: you cannot trust a liar, and without trust, you cannot have respect, safety, or love. You only have illusion. Liars are dangerous because they create worlds that do not exist, and then convince you to live in them. But you are not meant to live in illusions. You are meant to live in truth, even when it's difficult, even when it hurts. Truth will always give you clarity, and clarity will always give you strength. Lies may feel comforting in the moment, but they will always betray you in the end. That is why you must avoid liars, no matter how much history, no matter how much love, no matter how much they promise to change. Protect your peace, protect your clarity, protect your life. Because once you remove liars, you make room for people who will honor you with honesty. And that is the only foundation strong enough to build something real. The fifth dangerous person you must avoid is the manipulator, because their power lies in control that doesn't look like control. Manipulators rarely come at you directly. They don't scream or threaten openly. Instead, they pull strings quietly, making you believe their choices are your choices, their desires are your desires, and their lies are your truth. Their danger is in their subtlety. You don't always realize you're being manipulated until you're already tangled in their web, questioning yourself, doubting your instincts, and surrendering pieces of your independence little by little. A manipulator thrives on your willingness to second-guess yourself, and if you let them, they will shape your life into something that serves them while draining you of your power. Manipulators operate through tactics that seem harmless at first. They guilt trip you into saying yes when you wanted to say no. They play the victim to get sympathy and avoid accountability. They twist your words to make you feel like you're the one who's always wrong. Their favorite weapon is emotional leverage, using your kindness, your loyalty, or your love against you. And because their tactics are subtle, you often don't see the manipulation until it's too late. You look back and realize how many times you went against your own judgment just to keep the peace. How many times you put their needs before your own just to avoid conflict? How many times you silenced yourself because they convinced you that your voice didn't matter? That's the slow erosion of self that manipulators cause. One of the most dangerous tricks manipulators use is making you doubt your reality. This is called gaslighting, and it's one of their most powerful weapons. They deny things you know you saw or heard. They twist situations until you begin to wonder if you're overreacting or imagining things. They turn their mistakes into your responsibility. When this happens over and over, you begin to lose trust in your own judgment. That's the trap. A manipulator doesn't just control your actions, they control your perception of yourself. And when you no longer trust your own instincts, it becomes easier for them to lead you wherever they want. That's why being around manipulators is so dangerous. You risk losing not just your freedom, but your confidence and sense of self. Another layer of manipulation is their ability to disguise control as love, support, or guidance. They might say, "I'm only doing this because I care about you," or "I just want what's best for you." On the surface, it sounds like concern, but if you look deeper, you realize it's really about control. Their version of what's best is what benefits them, not you. And the more you buy into that disguised control, the more you hand over your autonomy. Over time, you stop asking yourself, "What do I want?" Because you've been conditioned to only ask, "What do they want from me?" That's how manipulators strip away your independence without you even realizing it. The hardest part about dealing with manipulators is that they often know you well. They know your weaknesses, your fears, your insecurities, and they don't hesitate to use those against you. If you fear abandonment, they'll threaten to leave. If you crave approval, they'll withhold it until you bend to their will. If you struggle with guilt, they'll remind you of everything they've done for you, as if you owe them your loyalty forever. They know exactly which buttons to press because they've studied you. And the danger in that is immense, because when someone knows you deeply but chooses to weaponize that knowledge, you are no longer in a relationship. You're in a battle for your freedom. Protecting yourself from manipulators requires ruthless self-awareness. You must learn to notice when your choices don't feel like yours. You must ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I feel pressured, guilty, or afraid? That question alone can reveal manipulation at work. You also need to trust patterns, not words. Manipulators are skilled talkers. They'll promise to change, they'll insist they mean well, they'll dress up their control as care. But their patterns of behavior never lie. If you feel drained, silenced, or trapped around someone consistently, then you are being manipulated. That feeling in your gut is not paranoia, it's your warning system. The danger is not in listening to it, the danger is in ignoring it. It takes strength to cut manipulators out of your life, because they don't let go easily. When you set boundaries, they'll try to guilt you. When you distance yourself, they'll play the victim. When you refuse to be controlled, they'll try to punish you. But you must remember this: your freedom is worth the discomfort of their reaction. Every time you stand firm against manipulation, you reclaim a piece of your power. And once you take your power back, the manipulator loses theirs. That is the truth they don't want you to realize. Without your compliance, they are powerless. The cost of keeping manipulators in your life is too high. You lose time making decisions that aren't yours. You lose peace of mind questioning your every move. You lose opportunities because you're too busy serving someone else's agenda. And worst of all, you lose yourself piece by piece, until you no longer recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. That is why manipulators are dangerous. They don't just take advantage of you. They reshape you into someone who doubts, someone who hesitates, someone who no longer trusts their own worth. And if you let that happen long enough, you'll forget who you truly are. To avoid manipulators, you must become unshakable in your boundaries. You must be willing to say no without explaining, to walk away without guilt, and to choose yourself without hesitation. You must remember that love without respect is not love, and care without freedom is not care. Manipulators will try to convince you otherwise, but the truth is simple. Anyone who truly values you will never need to twist, guilt, or control you. They will honor your choices, respect your boundaries, and celebrate your independence. Anyone who does the opposite does not belong in your life. Because life is too short to be controlled, too valuable to be wasted, and too sacred to be lived under someone else's manipulation. The sixth dangerous person you must avoid is the constant critic, because their words are not just words, they are weapons designed to chip away at your confidence and self-worth until you begin to shrink into a version of yourself that no longer believes in your own potential. The critic hides behind the illusion of being helpful, often disguising their sharp comments as advice, feedback, or concern. But the truth is their intention is rarely to build you up, it is to cut you down. They thrive on pointing out flaws, magnifying mistakes, and reminding you of everything you're not. And if you let them, their voice becomes louder than your own inner voice until you begin to see yourself through their distorted lens. Critics have a way of making even your victories feel like failures. You share an achievement, and instead of celebrating you, they point out what you could have done better. You take a step forward, and they're quick to remind you of the 10 more steps you haven't taken yet. No matter how hard you work or how much you grow, in their eyes it is never enough. That is their power. They plant seeds of doubt so deep that you start questioning whether your progress matters, whether your dreams are valid, whether your best will ever be good enough. And once you begin to internalize their voice, you don't even need them around anymore to feel criticized, because you start carrying their negativity with you, repeating their words in your own mind. The critic often disguises themselves as someone who just wants the best for you. They'll say, "I'm only being honest," or "I'm just trying to help you." But honesty that only focuses on tearing down without building up is not honesty, it's cruelty. Help that makes you feel smaller is not help, it's sabotage. Their words are laced with superiority, designed to position themselves as above you, as if they have the right to determine your worth or limit your growth. And if you are not careful, you will begin to hand over your self-esteem to someone who feeds off, diminishing it. One of the most dangerous effects of being around constant critics is that they make you play small. You stop taking risks because you don't want to give them more ammunition to tear you down. You silence your ideas because you're afraid they'll mock them. You dim your light because you've been conditioned to believe shining too brightly will only attract their negative attention. That's how critics win, not by stopping you directly, but by making you stop yourself. Their poison doesn't just come from the outside, it seeps inside and convinces you that maybe they're right, maybe you're not enough, maybe you should stay in your place. That's why critics are so dangerous, because they don't just wound your confidence, they slowly strangle your ambition. Critics also love to make themselves the authority of your life. They want to dictate what success should look like for you, what you should aim for, what you should settle for. They use comparison as a weapon, constantly measuring you against others and reminding you how far behind you are. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. No one else has your journey. No one else carries your vision, and no one else gets to define your worth. When you allow critics to control the narrative of your life, you give them permission to limit a story that was never theirs to write. The antidote to the critic's poison is a deep, unshakable sense of self-worth. You must decide that your value is not up for debate, not negotiable, not dependent on anyone's approval. You must learn to separate feedback that helps you grow from criticism that only serves to break you. There is a difference between someone who challenges you to rise and someone who cuts you down to keep you small. One is growth, the other is control. Knowing the difference will save you from internalizing voices that were never meant to guide you. The hardest part about facing critics is that sometimes they are the closest to you. They might be family, friends, or even mentors, and because of that their words cut deeper. But proximity does not equal authority. Just because someone is close does not mean they deserve a say in your potential. Their voice might be loud, but you get to decide whether it becomes permanent in your head. And sometimes the most powerful act of self-respect is to silence their access to you, to create distance, to stop inviting their judgment into your space. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it's survival. If you let critics stay in your life unchecked, the cost is heavy. You begin to lose confidence in your decisions, you stop pursuing opportunities, you waste years playing small just to avoid being judged. But the truth is, no matter what you do, critics will always find something to attack, because their criticism is not about you, it's about them. It reflects their own insecurities, their own dissatisfaction, their own fear of being exposed. Understanding that is what sets you free. You realize their voice doesn't define you. It reveals them. The danger of critics is real, but so is your power to rise above them. The moment you stop seeking their approval, the moment you stop trying to prove yourself to them, the moment you stop letting their voice override your own, you win. You don't silence them by arguing. You silence them by succeeding anyway, by living fully, by refusing to shrink. Critics will always exist, but so will your strength, and the choice is yours. Do you let their voice become your cage? Or do you use their noise as fuel to step into the life you deserve? Because the truth is, no one can shrink you unless you hand them the power to do so, and it's time to take that power back. The seventh dangerous person you must avoid is the manipulator, because unlike the obvious enemy who shows their intentions clearly, the manipulator works in shadows, twisting reality until you can no longer tell if what you feel is real, or if it is something they've planted inside you. Their weapon is not aggression but control, not force but persuasion. And what makes them so dangerous is that they don't just want access to your time or energy, they want to control your choices, your thoughts, and even your emotions. They thrive on pulling your strings like a puppeteer, and if you don't see it early, you will find yourself dancing to their tune without even realizing that your life no longer belongs fully to you. Manipulators are masters of guilt. They know how to make you feel responsible for their happiness, for their struggles, for their failures, and for their needs. If you try to set boundaries, they twist the story until you feel selfish or heartless. If you say no, they remind you of everything they've done for you, real or exaggerated, just to force you back into compliance. Their favorite phrase is subtle but powerful. After everything I've done for you, they condition you to carry their burdens, to put their priorities above yours, until your life revolves around managing their emotions. And the longer you allow this, the more you lose yourself in the process. What makes manipulation so insidious is that it often looks like care, like love, like concern. The manipulator will position themselves as the one who understands you most, the one who only wants the best for you. But behind that mask is a hunger for control. They will push you toward choices that benefit them, not you. They will gaslight you into questioning your own reality, making you doubt your memory, your instincts, your perception of events. You walk away from conversations confused, uncertain, even guilty, and that confusion is the evidence of manipulation at work. When you no longer trust yourself, when you look to them for answers, that's when they win. The manipulator knows how to use your strengths against you. If you are compassionate, they exploit your kindness. If you are loyal, they weaponize your loyalty. If you are ambitious, they wrap themselves into your goals so that you feel obligated to carry them forward with you. They study you closely, not to love you better but to control you more effectively. They know what buttons to push, what insecurities to poke, and what fears to amplify, and they do it with such skill that you often don't realize it's happening until you're already trapped in their web. One of the most dangerous effects of being around manipulators is that they drain you of clarity. You can't think straight because you're always second-guessing yourself. You can't make decisions with confidence because you're worried about how they'll react. You can't trust your own feelings because they've convinced you that you're overreacting, too sensitive, or imagining things. This mental fog is not accidental. It's their strategy. Because the less sure you are of yourself, the more dependent you become on them. And dependency is exactly what they want, because it ensures you will always remain within their control. The most powerful tool you have against manipulators is awareness. Once you see their tactics clearly, they lose their grip on you. That means paying attention to patterns, not just words. Do they consistently twist situations to make themselves the victim? Do they often remind you of what you owe them? Do you walk away from interactions feeling smaller, guilty, or unsure of yourself? These are not signs of love or care, they are signs of control. Awareness allows you to detach from the emotional hooks they try to set inside you, and when you detach, their power begins to weaken. But awareness alone is not enough, you must also enforce boundaries. Manipulators do not respect boundaries, they test them, push them, and try to make you feel guilty for setting them. That is why your boundaries must be firm, consistent, and unapologetic. You don't need to explain endlessly why you're saying no. You don't need to justify your choices. The more you try to explain, the more opportunities you give them to twist your words. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is silence, distance, and a clear refusal to be pulled into their games. The moment you stop reacting to their emotional hooks, the moment you stop feeding their need for control, you take your power back. The cost of keeping manipulators in your life is heavy. You lose trust in yourself, you waste years trying to please someone who will never be satisfied, and you sacrifice your peace of mind for a false sense of harmony. They will never stop asking for more, never stop pulling, never stop twisting, because manipulation is not a phase, it is who they are. The sooner you recognize this, the sooner you can free yourself from the cycle. Because every moment you spend under the influence of a manipulator is a moment stolen from your own growth, your own happiness, your own life. The truth is, you cannot save a manipulator. You cannot love them into changing. You cannot sacrifice yourself into fixing them. The only choice you have is to reclaim your independence, to separate your emotions from their control, to walk away from the fog and step back into clarity. And once you do, you will see how much of yourself you had given away without realizing it. You will feel lighter, stronger, freer, and you will wonder how you ever allowed someone else to dictate your life. Manipulators are dangerous because they blur the lines between love and control, but your power lies in remembering that true love, true respect, true connection does not need manipulation to exist. It thrives in freedom, not control. The eighth dangerous person you must avoid is the energy vampire, because unlike the obvious enemy who comes with attacks and hostility, this one drains you quietly, feeding on your spirit until you feel depleted, exhausted, and lifeless without even understanding why. You can spot them not by what they do in one moment, but by how you feel after spending time with them. Every time they leave your space, you feel heavier, drained, and unmotivated. And that is the mark of someone who takes more than they give, who survives by consuming the light of others. Energy vampires may not always be loud, angry, or aggressive, but the damage they cause is real and deep, because they don't just steal your time. They steal your vitality. They often show up disguised as constant complainers, the ones who never see a solution, only problems. And every conversation with them turns into a dumping ground for their frustrations. They're not interested in growth or progress, only in pulling you into their pit so they don't feel alone in their misery. You may start out listening, trying to support, but soon you realize that no matter how much advice you give, no matter how much encouragement you offer, it's never enough, because they don't want answers. They want your energy. And if you're not careful, they will feed on your empathy until you feel like you've been carrying their life on your shoulders while they do nothing to change it. Another form of energy vampire is the perpetual victim, the one who always has something wrong, always has a crisis, always needs rescuing. They thrive on being saved, and they make you feel responsible for their well-being. At first, it may feel good to be needed, but eventually, you see the trap. Your time, your energy, your strength is being siphoned away while they continue the same cycles, refusing to take responsibility. They are addicted to pity, and they keep you hooked by making you feel guilty if you don't help. The danger here is not that they ask for support, but that they never give anything back. They never stand on their own. They drain you until you have nothing left for yourself. What makes energy vampires especially dangerous is that they often operate unconsciously. They don't always wake up and decide to drain you, but their habits, their mindset, their inability to manage their own energy make them dangerous to your peace of mind. They normalize dysfunction, normalize negativity, normalize dependency. And if you stay close too long, you start to mirror their behavior without realizing it. You become more negative, more drained, more hopeless, because energy is contagious. And when you are surrounded by people who feed on your light instead of adding to it, your own flame begins to dim. You must understand that your energy is your most valuable currency. It fuels your mind, your body, your dreams, your relationships, your entire life. Once it is drained, you cannot think clearly, you cannot pursue goals with passion, you cannot show up fully in your life. That is why energy vampires are so dangerous, because they rob you of the very force that keeps you alive and moving forward. Money lost can be earned again, opportunities lost can return, but energy once drained is gone, and if you don't protect it, you will find yourself living a half life, tired, resentful, and unfulfilled. The way to deal with energy vampires is not by trying to fix them or give them more, it is by setting strict boundaries and protecting your space. You must learn to limit your exposure, to recognize when someone is pulling too much from you without giving anything in return. Sometimes this means reducing time spent with them. Sometimes it means cutting ties completely. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it is survival. Because every moment you allow yourself to be drained, you are giving away the power that was meant to fuel your own purpose. You cannot heal, grow, or thrive while carrying someone else's weight endlessly. It is also critical to build awareness of your own patterns. Ask yourself, why do you keep allowing people to drain you? Do you feel guilty saying no? Do you fear disappointing others? Do you tie your worth to how much you give? Energy vampires survive not just because they take, but because you keep giving. The moment you break that cycle, The moment you choose to prioritize your own energy, their grip on you weakens. You must train yourself to recognize that protecting your light is not cruelty, it is an act of strength. Only when you are full, energized, and strong can you show up for the people who truly matter. The harsh truth is this: if you keep energy vampires in your circle, they will rob you of years, not just hours. You will look back and realize how much time you spent carrying people who were never willing to walk on their own. You will wonder how much further you could have gone if you had saved that energy for yourself, for your purpose, for the people who actually add to your life. That is why it is so critical to recognize them early and make the hard choice to distance yourself, because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to untangle from their grip. Your energy is sacred. Protect it as fiercely as you would protect your most precious treasure. Surround yourself with people who ignite your fire, not those who extinguish it. Choose relationships where there is balance, where giving and receiving flow naturally, where both sides grow stronger together. Anything less than that is not love, not friendship, not connection. It is theft disguised as care. And once you truly understand that, you will never again allow an energy vampire to drain you, because you will see clearly that your energy is the foundation of your power, and no one has the right to steal it from you.